Hey,
So I don't know what happened there.
yeah, that was weird. Sorry.
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I just got booted out. I'm not really sure what happened. It just ended. Um, well, what we were talking about, guys, was Finn's going to play golf at the University of Northern Colorado, and we were talking about graduation coming up. He's at IMG Academy, just finishing up there. Been there for you're there for 2 years, right?
Yeah, junior and senior year.
Okay. So that's where we had an opportunity to meet,
Hmm.
and was just saying congratulations to him. It's a big accomplishment, obviously, to graduate high school, move on to the next chapter, especially somebody that's put in a lot of work like you have.
Hmm.
You've had some adversity along the way, and I just want to kind of share your story with the group. So, what I was asking before we got cut off was, can you just kind of tell the group a little bit about how you got introduced to the game of golf?
So I mean, it's kind of a long story, but basically, so I moved to the golf course, and I just go out at night and just kind of practice just for fun after they pulled the flags. And I'd just go to the driving range, and it was just a hobby while I was still mogul skiing. Um, and I was still mogul skiing was my main sport, but I eventually I broke both my knees mogul skiing, and I kind of fell off liking it, and it was too much pain, and I just kind of pushed towards golf more and more.
Yeah,
And then between my freshman and sophomore year, I decided to stop skiing and kind of push and pursue golf as my main um, objective. And I spent sophomore year kind of deciding. I came down to IMG for a camp, and that
hmm
I loved it down there. So I decided that I would love to go to school at IMG Academy, and I ended up going to IMG Academy. So it was kind of a gradual transition from skiing to golf over my high school career, essentially.
yeah. Well, I got an opportunity to build a little bit of a relationship with you, which I
Yeah,
appreciate. And you're a modest person, you're a humble person, and
thank you.
I want you to paint a little bit of a more I guess just a bigger picture of what you were doing in the skiing world. I mean, it wasn't like you were just skiing moguls. You were competing at a really high level. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was 13 years old, I was ranked second in the country for my age group. The one kid who's ahead of me is on the U.S. ski team right now, but I I was, and then the very next month, I ended up breaking my knees, and it was just. But I was competing in some really high level events
Yeah.
against some really good competition. Um, but I for in eighth grade, yeah, it was eighth grade. I broke my knees, and then I came back freshman year to try and come back, and I skied really strong. I had some strong finishes, but I I just the pain was too much in my knees. But I was competing in some pretty high level events against a lot of older kids, and it was so just getting. It's kind of like in golf when you're a younger kid and you're competing in some of these bigger events against older kids, and they're
Yeah.
competing high level and they're a lot better than you. It's the same thing essentially. So it was definitely
Yeah.
very competitive.
What was your mindset like in those competitions against maybe not necessarily stronger competitors, but just older, maybe
Hmm.
more experienced competition?
You know, I my main focus was it was just great exposure to try and compete against kids that I knew it was very difficult to beat just basically because they were older than me, but getting
Yeah.
to compete against them and just see how I stacked up, and trying my best to beat as many as I could possibly beat and just do the best I possibly could,
Yeah.
knowing I wasn't going in there to win. I was going in there to just show what I had for how old I was. And but they also had these age group competitions, so they would place you in an age group,
Okay.
other than just the total finish. So I would usually finish pretty well within my age group.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to imagine I've never mogul skied. I've downhill skied a couple times, but you talk about getting knocked down and getting back up. I mean, I think that's a metaphor in sports and in
Yeah,
life that we use a lot. I mean, I don't think there's any more of a literal sport where you could get knocked down and have to get back up
yeah,
than mogul skiing, right? So, I mean, um, not to not to put a damper on breaking your knees, obviously is a big deal, but like, are there any other challenges or stumbles along the way that you kind of had to work through as a young skier kind of coming up in a super competitive environment?
um, there are a lot. Trying to constantly push yourself to try and develop a new like a new trick off of one of the jumps is a very big goal that every kid's trying to improve upon. And then also trying to go down the run physically as fast as you can. I mean,
Hmm.
these are kind of some of the just two of the things that you're constantly just trying to improve,
Yeah.
because those are the defining factors in the mogul skiing world. But
Yeah.
one of the other biggest challenges is trying to balance, you're a little kid, you're skiing 5 days a week, you learn from a young age how to balance school and sport, which was definitely something that helped me when I came to IMG. So yeah, I was skiing in the morning, then going to school in the afternoon, making up my work after school. So that was definitely one of the definitely the probably the biggest lesson I learned from skiing that I
Yeah.
took to golf and sport.
Okay. Um, is there anything specific that's like helped you along the way? Because that's definitely something I think that a lot of young student athletes struggle with. Um, so, I mean, with a huge commitment to training, obviously you've got an obligation to, do well in school also to create, further opportunities for yourself as a student athlete. What things helped you kind of get through that in your planning and your preparation, those types of things?
So for preparation, and for planning, I'd say always staying on top of my work was definitely something that I was really trying to focus on, because that way I could have a clear mindset going into a lot of the competitions or my training. Because I'd say a lot of people definitely fall victim to this, and I have as well. Um, when you kind of fall behind in whatever you're trying to do, like school or whatever it is outside of school, if that stuff is bothering you when you're going into your training or your competitions, that's going to just affect you mentally. You might not be directly thinking about that, but that's going to definitely weigh down on you, and it's going to really drag you down and cause you to underperform, and really kind of struggle with what your uh, true goal is eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's not a conscious thing, right? But subconsciously you get out there
Hmm.
and, trying to compete and focus and, specifically with golf, it takes so much
Oh
of
yeah,
your mental energy, right? So
yeah.
if you've got other stuff that's bogging you down, like schoolwork and just not being on top of some of those things, then yeah, it can definitely have an impact.
Oh yeah, I'd say for golf much more so than anything else, because it's such a
Yeah.
mental game.
Yeah. Um, is there anything else skiing wise, or just maybe that transition to deciding, hey, I'm going to hang it up? I guess your first love would be, on the slopes, right? To
Yeah.
shift gears and focus, on getting really good at golf, which you were already a good player
Um,
before you made that
yeah,
decision, right?
thanks. Yeah, that was all right. But no, I'd say the biggest lesson I learned is, you know, just if you know something's right for you, you just have to go for it, because I was under a lot of pressure to keep skiing, because I was definitely very good. I was on the path to a ski team, like
Yep.
most likely. Um, but I just knew I didn't like it really anymore. It wasn't very fun for me, and I knew golf was something that I really enjoyed. Um,
Hmm.
and you just you have to know what's right for you. You can't just not do something because you others tell you to do it, or it's you might be better at it. If you love something, even if you're not as good as it, I'd say just go for it. And that's what I did, and I eventually got a lot better, because I'm happy all the more for it,
Yeah.
because I ended
Yeah.
up playing golf. Yeah.
So what was the transition like? obviously you decided that the academy world, it's something that a lot of families talk to me about, what does it take to be successful at a golf academy? There's several out there around the country. You chose IMG as a really good
Hmm.
fit for you, and you were successful there.
Yeah.
What does that look like? I mean, can you help some families or some younger players that are out there trying to understand, like, what does it take to be successful in that environment?
Well, I'd say the number one thing to be successful in that environment is to be a self-starter, a self-motivator, and someone who's able to propel yourself without the help of others. So, like, if you're someone who is already doing your schoolwork without anyone telling you to do it, or you're already practicing on your own without
Hmm.
anyone telling you, oh, go practice, I think IMG is a great place for you because they help you facilitate your practice routines and your coaching into
Yeah.
a condensed environment where you can really, really, really improve. And that's what I did. I took full advantage of the opportunity I have. I went in, I wasn't very good. I was like probably a 78, 79 golfer.
Hmm.
But I worked really hard. I didn't really, I went in just kind of like as this is how my coach Jay Denton said I was an athlete who could play golf, and I came out looking like a golfer who was also an athlete. But no,
Yeah.
I came down and I came to like a 72 golfer. So I mean, a low 70, 72 golfer. So I definitely got improvement in the year and a half, 2 years that I was down there. So it's really a place where you can just focus on what you're trying to do. You can go in there with a really strong goal, and you can accomplish that goal. I mean, if you really have the motivation to do it.
Yeah. What were your goals going in?
My goal going in was to play college golf. I mean, you know Scott Becker, obviously.
Yep.
He coached me when I went down there for camp. He talked to my mom. He's like, Finn's definitely got the potential. He can, if he comes down here, he's the kind of kid who can really make a lot of, or really improve a lot,
Yeah.
and go play Division I golf. And that's exactly what I did. So if there's a kid down there or some out there who's considering going to a place like IMG, I would recommend going to IMG, obviously. But
Yeah.
if you're maybe not quite where you want to be skill level, you can go to IMG. You can have a very um, solid goals and mindset, and you can really accomplish a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you that missed the episode that I did with Scott, who Finn's referencing, Scott Becker is an instructor at IMG. We did an Instagram live. I reposted the video. You can find it on Instagram. It's on YouTube as well. But we kind of actually we don't really talk a bunch about him, but I tried to help give him some advice for some of his students with some of the physical and mental training stuff that I'm working on myself. So I kind of told that story. You guys can go watch that. But I remember sitting down with Scott and your mom actually in the campus center
Yeah.
at IMG because if I'm not mistaken, your mom graduated from Dartmouth. Is that right?
Yes, Dartmouth. Yeah.
Okay, and Scott coached for a brief period of time at Dartmouth too. So there was
Oh,
that
really?
like, yeah, there was like an immediate connection there. So it was just a really good conversation, just talking about your potential and those types of
Oh,
things.
that's
Which,
awesome.
yeah, it was cool. But you definitely took full advantage of the opportunity, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So one of my favorite experiences with you was when we went up to a tournament in New Jersey.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think you took second, which is a little
Second
bit hard
place,
to
yeah.
believe because you played really well. But was that the best tournament that you've had so far in terms
Yeah,
of
that was the
just like
best.
pure scoring?
Yeah, pure scoring. That was the best tournament I've ever had.
So tell us about it a little bit.
Well, going in, I'd been working well. I've been kind of trending upwards essentially, and I went in with a lot of confidence, and I'd say that this actually pretty big message here. Oops, is how big of a factor confidence plays in your golf game. But I went in there with a lot of confidence. I was like, oh yeah, I can definitely tear this course apart, and I ended up shooting a 65 the first day. Um,
Yep.
so I played, and then I shot one under the second day. So I shot 8 under for 2 days, which is pretty good. Um, and so I'd say that was definitely a very eye-opening moment for me. It really pushed my ranking up. It pushed me up from probably like I'd say like 950 to like 550 on Junior Golf Scoreboard.
Yeah.
So it's and then yeah, that's another lesson that I definitely thinks people can learn from that is like, one really good tournament can turn your whole college recruiting around, your whole confidence around, your ranking, like, can just skyrocket. Like, I mean, it's incredible how well or how impactful a really good tournament is.
Yeah, I mean, you can, have some really good breakout moments, if you can string together a couple good rounds in a row, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember specifically, I mean, so that was a huge week actually, because that was Masters week last year.
That was Masters week.
Tiger came back and won it.
Hmm.
And so that was pretty cool. But I remember, I think, so we drove in from the airport and we kind of had to rush to get to a practice round. And then it started pouring, I think, at the end of it. So it was kind of a rough practice day,
Yeah,
if I remember. Like,
yeah.
nobody had seen the course. Like, you played maybe like half or three-quarters of the holes. And it was a little bit of a miserable, I think, day because we'd been flying all morning. Then we go to the course, play a practice round in the afternoon. So, I mean, you were able to channel some really good mental energy, though, going into the first round, and you fire a 65.
Yeah, thank you.
I really wanted to watch you that day, but I didn't watch you at all because I think the first time I saw you was coming off of 9. You were making the turn. I
I
can't
think
remember what you
so.
shot on the front, but it
I
was
shot, yeah, five
low.
under on the front, but I remember
Yeah.
at the end it was funny that you took the video. You said this putt for 64. I ended up missing it, but then I walked off the green, and you go
Yeah, yeah,
like, Finn, that 65. That's a hell of a round, but you know
yeah.
what? You're in second place. Jason shot a 64. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, he did. He did. Um, yeah, but I remember, I didn't really know what to do. I wanted to watch you, but, I didn't want to mess with, kind of what was going on. You're already
Oh no,
obviously in a
yeah, yeah. I
really good
remember you were on
rhythm.
11. You're on 11. I saw you.
Or was it 11? Yeah, I saw you.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, now I remember you coming up 18 and saying, that putt's for 64. And you said something like, I'm not really sure what to do. And I said, well, line it up and knock it in. But yeah, you did end up missing it, but still, that was a really good round. Really good
Thank you.
round. And then what was more impressive for me is it's hard to go low 2 days in a row, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
to shoot another 65 the next day would have been obviously an awesome thing to do.
Yeah.
But just to be able to keep it together, first time going that low, to be able to keep your composure going into a second
Exactly. Yeah.
round, still shoot under par, 71. Just a really good approach and a good tournament for you for sure.
Yeah. Thank
What
you.
big takeaways did you have from that tournament?
Well, it just proved myself. Well, I just proved to myself that I did have the potential to shoot the scores that I always known that I could shoot, and to
Hmm.
place as well as I could place. I mean, that was actually 65. That was my first ever round under par in a tournament. Because, I mean,
Wow.
that was, yeah, I thought that was the funniest part of it. So, I mean,
Quite the
not that much.
fashion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not that much tournament experience, not that much golf experience beforehand.
Yeah.
Being able to shoot 65 as my first under par round in a tournament, that was the most exciting part.
Yep. Yep. Um, I can't remember how the rest of that year finished out. I left the academy shortly after that, probably within the
Yeah.
next month, and then school was out. And then obviously, I haven't been there this year for your senior year, but
Hmm.
I did make it back to campus a couple times.
Yeah, I saw you around.
Yeah, and one trip I ran into you, and hey Finn, how's everything going? And you were pretty bummed. You had just found out that you had a broken or fractured back,
Yeah, two
and
fractures in the L3.
yeah, talk to us a little bit about that because obviously you've created an opportunity now for yourself, and I can imagine going through an injury like that, is really deflating, right? It could be. But you obviously took it as an opportunity to overcome that adversity. I don't know. I want to learn a little bit more just about like, what was the process of finding out? Okay. Like what was your mindset in like trying to figure out what you needed to do? Was it, you know, you were really down and then you kind of like snapped out of it and all right, I got to get to work? Or was it just, hey, I was, positive about the whole time? Or just walk us through kind of that whole experience.
So a little background is that, yeah, throughout the summer, I mean, I played three big tournaments. I got into a few big tournaments, but all three of them, I was playing through back pain, and it just kind of progressively got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Um, but going into school, I was like, all right, you know what? I had a bad summer, whatever. So I'm gonna go back to school. I'm probably gonna have to take a post grad year. I kind of lost a couple of the opportunities for college that I had, just unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I went back to school, and 3 weeks, my back felt all right. It was still hurting a bit, but it kept getting worse and worse those few weeks I got back to school, and it got so bad. Like every single swing I made, I mean, I thought it was so bad.
Yeah.
And as it got to the point like where I was like, God, I cannot believe my back is hurting this bad. I got to get this checked out. So then I got it checked out. I had two fractures in the L3 vertebrae. So I was like, no wonder my back hurts.
Right.
But at first I was pretty pissed off. I mean, I was like, this is the worst. I can't believe this is happening to me.
Yeah.
Um, but over time, or the next, few weeks to few months, I kind of started to realize, you know what? I think my mental game was probably not in the right place. I was probably not thinking clearly because of the back. So, being able to take some time off from golf might be beneficial for me.
Hmm.
I think I could definitely become a better player after this.
Yeah.
So starting in January, I started to be able to putt, and then just kind of progressed slowly from there, being able to chip and then putt. I mean, chip and then pitch and then irons, and then eventually driver.
Yeah.
I mean, with not really, I mean, I had like one flare up in the beginning of March, but that was about it. I was doing just fine.
Yeah.
I had a lot of improvement, so I was fortunate I didn't need surgery, so I was able to heal on my own. But it was definitely a long process. I had to do a lot. But I definitely say I'm a much better player right now,
Yeah.
as a
Did you
result
ever
of the
have any
injury.
moments like when you were going through it that um, you were just like, man, I don't know if this is worth it, or was there any time like along the way that you just felt like um, the dedication that it was going to require, the discipline that it was going to require, that those things were going to be too challenging to really take on and overcome?
Um, I always knew that I would be able to play golf again. I never thought that this was going to be too difficult to overcome. I always knew I'd be able to um, kind of recover for it. But kind of on similar lines, my mom and I were discussing briefly about possibly leaving IMG for the rest of the year and just
Mm.
coming back here home
Yeah.
for school in Colorado. And I was like, you know what? I mean, if I'm able to play golf in March, like the doctor said, that gives me 3 months to try and improve um, when I do get better and play a couple tournaments down at school. I still
Yeah.
at that point I was considering I was like, oh, post grad year. I'm gonna have to take a post grad year. I've fallen off the radar. I've been the broken back and everything's kind of gone against me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I stayed at IMG, and I'm glad I did. I was able to do everything kind of right in the same place because I was able to just slowly build on my golf game, starting with putting, then the chipping, and just over that 2 month period from like January to March, just slowly build my golf game back up. So I'm glad I did stay at IMG. So I
Yeah.
persevered, I suppose.
Yeah. You did for sure. Yeah. I mean, you've had challenges in all the sports that you've played, right? I mean, tough little go in skiing, but you accomplished a lot at a really high level, which you should
Yeah,
be super, proud about. But then
thank you.
carrying that over to golf, obviously, couple stumbles there, but um, now you're in a position where you're going to play Division I college golf, and
Yeah.
you kept your nose on the grindstone, and you gritted it out and did what it took to, overcome some of those challenges. So, I mean, was University of Northern Colorado a school that was even on your radar prior to getting injured?
Um, so prior to getting injured during the summer, I was mainly talking to Santa Clara and the University of Colorado. They both showed quite a bit of interest going into the summer, but
Okay.
You know, I both those kind of, fell off. And I kind of stepped back, and for a few months, I didn't even really focus on college recruiting. I just was like, I'm going to focus on getting better. I'm
Yeah.
going to just say to everyone, I'm coming in 2021, taking a postgraduate. I just thought that I had no other options. And
Yeah.
then starting, probably in December throughout February, I kind of started a new list of schools, and I was just kind of throwing a bunch of emails out there, just trying to, see what options or what opportunities I could possibly have. And I
Hmm.
I emailed Roger Prensley, who's the head coach at University of Northern Colorado, and he immediately emailed back. He was he funny enough, he herniated his discs L4 and L5, so we had that
Oh
connection
wow.
kind of right
Yeah.
away. But he that from the moment I really kind of started talking to him, he really showed a lot of interest, and he was really um, a great ally in the whole process. And eventually, and he's been really supportive of me. He's been a great guy throughout the process. But I never had considered. I mean, they're an unbelievable program. They're great. They have a great program. So, but
Yeah.
I never had considered them. I don't know.
So what advice would you give people, like, injured or not, just going through that recruiting process? I mean, um, if you want to talk a little bit about, like, just your communication out to coaches, like what what types of things are you sending, or were you sending coaches, whether it's emails or tournament, schedules, or like different stuff like that. What kind of communication patterns did you have with coaches?
Um, so for the most part, for the coaches that showed a little bit interest, I would send out the preliminary email, like telling them my school, kind of like my GPA, my scoring average,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Then say like I love your program. I'd send them my tournament results. So kind of the basic preliminary email stuff, and then if they would respond back to me, I'd be like, hey, here's my upcoming turn. They'd be like, okay, I'd love to come see you play here. And I'll be like, here's my upcoming tournament schedule.
Yeah.
Um, since I've definitely gone through the process much differently than anyone else would. I mean,
Yeah.
they said they would come to a couple of my tournaments. Um, no one ever really did. I mean, that was obviously over the summer. The coaches didn't, but and then
Yeah.
the ones I had started the new list with said they would come to my tournaments, but I haven't played one obviously, and I've not emailed them again.
Yeah.
But I
So how were you able to, with that being said, I mean, obviously you still got their attention, right? So was that, I guess, how did you paint the picture of, like, here's who I am and what I'm capable of without you having ever come to see me play?
I mean I tried to give them as much information as I possibly could in that first email. I tried to just be as straightforward as possible, be like, hey, my name is Finn Sapp. I'm from Vail, Colorado. This is my tournament scoring average. This is my GPA. This is my SAT. These are my tournament scores. I'd love to be a part of your team. You have a great program. I'm really interested. I mean,
Yeah.
that's obviously I'd expand on that a little bit, and, a couple paragraphs, not like too long, not too short. You want to make it just a couple paragraphs, kind of giving them that information. Get a spreadsheet with your tournament scores, like the location of the course length, um, what course it was, your scores, and then possibly I gave my contact info, my coach's contact information, Jay Denson, in case they had any questions. So something like that, just like a reference.
Yeah.
Um, so just trying to be straightforward as possible, give them as much information as possible, because they're not they've never seen you, they don't know who you are. But then
Sure.
if they ask for more, you send them your swing videos, you send them your tournament schedule, you try and just keep contact with them, you try and um, stay in touch. If you have any new developments, give them that. If you have a
Yeah.
good result in a tournament, give them that. Just don't fall off of their radar. Try and stay in contact with them. Try and make sure that they know they still are interested in you, and they're still in contact with you, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things that families struggle with a little bit, and I've talked about it on here with some coaches, some college coaches before, in terms of just the communication between, recruits and prospective student athletes, and how they so much appreciate and want the student athlete themselves to be the one that's reaching out, to be the one that's building the relationship, those types of things. And, I think that sometimes parents struggle with that a little bit, because parents want to help their kids, and so they want to communicate and reach out on the kids' behalf. And then sometimes the student athletes just don't really even understand, what they're trying to do, and you're nervous, talking to a coach, because it's almost like you're interviewing for a job. It's
Yeah.
a situation like that. So, why do you think it's so important to be the one, as the student athlete, that's developing that relationship and driving the communication?
Well, it shows that you're a proactive student and person. I mean, it shows that if they take you on your team, or if they take you on their team, excuse me, you're going to be the one who's able to drive your own practice, to communicate with your own teachers, to communicate with the coach if you need anything,
Yeah.
or if you need to do anything. It shows that you would be an active member of the team, possibly a leader
Yeah.
amongst the members of the team, and that you would just be a valuable person to add to the university and the golf team. I mean, it's just a very strong um, uh, trait that coaches like to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all the coaches that I've had on have talked about how important it is for them to communicate directly with the student athlete. So, yeah, I think a good proactive approach definitely
Hmm.
can set you apart, probably, from maybe some of the other people that are trying to reach out or communicate with the coaches, right?
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that you want to talk about that you think would be beneficial for this group, just training wise, or any other adversity advice? Or, you're a grinder. I know that. I watched you work for
Hmm.
at least a year. Kind of like what you said, almost you're relating it back to the coach and academics and, practice and stuff like that, but nobody had to tell you to do anything. Um, Obviously you asked for guidance and people are coaching you and instructing you. Jay was,
Hmm.
polish up your game and mechanics and stuff like that. But in terms of putting in the work, I think you're a really good example for that. So what advice do you have for young players around that?
So on the training and the work part, I think you have to be able to balance your training very well. You can't overdo it, obviously. I've definitely been a victim of that, but you can't undertrain as well. You have to know the right balance and what's right for you. I'd say that's definitely a very important thing to remember.
Is that
As
like a
for,
trial and error type of thing, or you just kind of got to
I'd
figure it
say,
out?
yeah, because I mean, when I first went to IMG, I was like, oh, I get to hit balls all the time. It's great. I just go after school, hit balls. But then I soon, like, and then I mean, I eventually started to really structure my practices where I would putt first, then chip. I'd usually putt for about 45 minutes to an hour, then chip for
Okay.
30 to 45 minutes. And then I would never spend more than hour and a half tops if I'm really working hard on the driving range, but an hour, I've never worked for more than an hour on the driving range. I just have a very focused range session, just work on what I need to work on. I know I just don't overdo it. I
Yeah.
mean, and you're not given a whole bunch of time to practice when you're at the driving range, because we're working out as well. So
Hmm.
we're given only a certain amount of time to be at the driving range, so you really want to be able to know what you need to work on and be able to structure your practice to focus on each part of your game and to try and improve every area, and not just sit on the range, because I know a few kids who just sit on the range for hours, like the entire time, just to hit balls, and
Yeah.
they're not working on their putting and their chipping. I always start putting, then chipping, then the driving range, because I mean, and but also because the back, I could only chip and putt to
Yeah.
start. So, but
Yeah.
that's how I do it. You got to find what works for you. You got to be able to balance your practice.
Do you think that, or you may know this 100%, but I'm just saying, is the reason behind that that you see more importance with the short game and you want to put, I guess, your max effort into that before maybe you're tired from hitting balls or something like that, or you don't want to make the short game an afterthought, or like
Hmm.
what's the thought process with your routine and kind of how you build out your practice schedule?
I definitely say that afterthought thing is probably the most important, I mean, or the biggest key, because my coach would be like, "Oh yeah, you used to just go over at the range, hit balls for forever, and then just come over here and just hit a couple putts for 10
Yeah,
minutes
yeah,
as an afterthought." Um,
mm,
so I'd say for me, focusing on the putting and then the chipping, like very just putting all my focus into that.
yeah,
That's where, I mean, because in my opinion, if you're only spending 30 minutes on the range, an hour on the range, in my opinion, that's enough time. If you're gonna get so, I mean, obviously, I that was because of my back as well. I didn't want to overdo it full swings,
sure,
but I'd say not hitting for 3 hours on the driving range is actually better for you. Focusing on the chipping and the putting, you're going to work on your technique. It's also going to help your mental focus, because you're probably going to do a chipping game or a putting game. It's going to help your
yeah,
mental focus, where just beating balls in the range isn't going to do anything. But having a very strategic and then concise plan when you go to the driving range for just a certain amount of time,
yeah.
that's how you're actually going to get better, in my opinion.
Yeah, is that something that you actually sit down and write out, or is it something that you just obviously you're giving it thought before you go, right?
Yeah.
But like, what does that look like for you?
I don't really write out my practices. I know, like, I typically will do like a putting drill for 20 minutes or so, and then we
Hmm.
usually have a putting course set up or some sort of putting activity that are that is set up for us. And then even here at home, I make my own, but I
Yeah,
I make sure my technique is right. But then you gotta implement it. So this is the problem that a lot of kids have and a lot of people have, is they just want to practice. They just want to practice. They think that's how they're going to get better. But you gotta implement your practice. You gotta be able to play. You
mm,
gotta be able to um, use your skills essentially.
yeah,
You're not playing golf swing. You're playing golf. You gotta be able to use your skills. So I always practice. I always do some sort of putting game. Try and focus on make it so it's more game speed, more real life
yeah,
chipping as well. And then you're going to go play golf with your full swing. So
yeah,
even on the range, trying to make certain games, like you can't miss right, you can't miss left, you got to hit it here. So just trying to make it more game speed is definitely something that's very beneficial for me.
yeah, yeah. When you're hitting balls on the range, I mean, I'm just trying to think of different ways that you can do this, but like I know Coach Brian, for example, used to always use this method of like play box and think box, I think
Oh
is what he
yeah,
called
yeah.
it. Remember
Hmm.
that? Where he would
Yes,
talk about
yeah,
like, hey, if you're working on something, you've got these four balls, and you're going to use those four balls to make the move that you're trying to make, or
hmm
whatever you're working on, and we're not worried about a result. And then we move to the next four balls, and those, like you're saying, you're actually trying to recreate a shot. Okay, here's my fairway, or this is my target, or those types of things. So you're not just mindlessly out there, just like you said, beating balls, not really
hmm
working on anything specific, but you're making your practice intentional and you're trying to really
exactly.
implement, some things that are going to help you out on the course, right? That you are going to
Yeah.
be able to take out to the course.
And that's something at IMG that's very helpful. It helps you kind of develop your practices very strategically, and it helps you kind of focus on what you need to focus on. That's what the coaches there are kind of helping you do. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Um, what else has helped you be successful in golf? Who's helped influence you?
Um, I'd say Jay, my golf coach, has definitely been the biggest um influence on me, because he just tells me how it is. If I like I at times, and I've gotten better at this, but I would get very down after just one bad shot, or just I'd get mad at myself after a
Yeah.
bad hole. And he's like, that's going to really affect you. That, I mean, just, yeah, I can see it on your face. The ups and downs are too much. You're kind of like this. Good golfers, they're just kind of like this. It's like they hit a bad shot, you can't, in a good shot, you can't really tell the difference. You got to kind of find that level. So some
Yeah.
advice like that, I'd say he more than anyone improved my mental game as
Yeah.
much as he did my actual golf swing. So that
Yeah.
was, yeah, very helpful.
Are there any triggers that like you use to like I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, but oh, I think it was when I had Jack Heath on last week and we were
Okay.
talking about he was saying that, of course I allow myself to get mad. You hit a bad shot, you get mad about it. Like that's just a
Yeah, yeah.
natural thing.
You
But
got to, yeah, you
he's
got to be able to let it go, have short-term
yeah,
memory.
he said like, I try to like 10 seconds is it. I give
Yeah,
myself 10 seconds to react and then I move on.
yeah.
Somebody else that I was talking with, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. It was a lady that I've had on before. It might have been Michelle Holmes. She's got a couple golf schools in the Carolina areas, but I think she was talking about like a trigger for her was putting her golf bag down. Like when she put her golf bag down at the shot, like, all right, she's now in
Hmm.
zone. She's ready to go through her routine, all that stuff. But then after the shot, reaction, good or bad, once that bag was picked back up and the strap hit the shoulder, that was it. That
Hmm.
was, no more reaction, good or bad. Like now we got to focus on thinking about the next shot. So, I mean, is there anything like that that you do or have done or kind of like, I guess, how did you grow in that area outside of just saying, I need to control my thoughts better?
Um, I'd say, like for like if I'm having a bad round, I used to just start really speeding up. Like I'd start walking really fast, getting ahead of my playing partners, and
Okay.
I just like trying to hit my shot as fast as possible to try and get the drop shots back as soon as possible because
Yeah.
I just, and just kind of letting it spiral. So what I would do is I just try and almost stay behind my playing partners, just try and keep it as slow as possible. If I say I make a silly bogey or something like that, and you're
Hmm.
just like, oh my God, that's so stupid. And then you hold on to it for two holes, you're going to
Yeah.
make two more bogeys. But if you just be like, you know what, I hit a bad putt or I hit a bad chip, whatever.
Yeah.
You just calm down. You take a couple deep breaths. You stay, you got to keep a good tempo. You got to keep a good pace while you're walking or playing, and that you just gotta just calm down and just focus on that next shot. You can't drag on a bad shot for the
Yeah.
rest of the round, and that's definitely messed me up several times in the
Yeah.
past. So
And
that's
it's
a
a
big
tough,
lesson I've learned.
yeah, it's a tough thing to do, right? So, I mean, it sounds like you're implementing some elements of, self-talk, telling yourself what you need to do and what you need to be focusing on. I mean, that's helped me out on the course as
Yeah.
well. Sometimes you feel silly doing it, but self-talk is
Hmm.
real. Like you're going to say negative stuff to yourself or you're going to say positive stuff to yourself. Like it's going to happen. So
Hmm.
I think if you can be conscious about it, right, and you can try to channel it to be more positive, to try to move past those challenges, it probably works a little bit better in your favor.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Anything else support system wise or anybody else? I know Jay's had a big impact for you,
Hmm.
but anybody else that's played a role, maybe not necessarily, in improving your actual game, but just, from
Yeah.
a support standpoint?
I'd say, this. I'd say being around other good golfers that you can be competitive with is definitely a very good support system because
Yeah.
like when I was skiing, I was around other really good skiers and we're constantly pushing each other to get better and we're constantly competing.
Yeah.
And then when I first started playing golf, I was just here on my own. I mean, I wasn't very good, but I didn't have anyone to compete with
Hmm.
or who was the same ability as me. But when I
Yeah.
first went to IMG, I immediately found a kind of a threshold of golfers that I was really competitive with, that I really enjoyed playing with.
Yep.
Um, and then even this year, even though I had an injury for most of the year. When I was
Yeah.
playing golf, I was really competitive with the golfers I was around, and it just makes golf more enjoyable. You're constantly pushing each other to get better. You really want to beat the other person. So the competing, it's going to improve your mental focus and you're just if you're competing, even if it's just a putting game for $5 or a drink, you want to win. So it's just you're getting yourself in the mindset of trying to win and trying to beat other people, and that helps you when you go to tournaments. So
Yeah.
having people that you can be competitive with is definitely something that's really a really good support system that I think every person should have when they're
Yeah.
playing golf or any
Yeah, I
sport.
agree. I agree. It's yeah, you've got to find ways to try to simulate pressure, right? Or
Yeah.
simulate that competition, or not just simulate the competition, but actually compete,
Hmm.
to learn how to win, to learn how to, push past another competitor, those types of things. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. Um, well, I want to move towards wrapping up, and one of the things that I
Okay.
do towards the end is ask you as the guest to fire a question or two back at me. So no real preparation for that, I understand. So it could be anything. It could be a junior golf topic. It could be just anything about this podcast project, or what we're doing with junior golf keys, or anything. What do you got?
What was it like putting on an entire Corn Ferry Tour event, and getting to be surrounded by that for, I mean, building up, I think it was like, what, a month or two, whatever it was. It was a long time
Yeah,
even building up to the tournament. So, like, what was that like? What was that experience like going from IMG?
yeah, it's a cool experience. So this year was the second year for the tournament.
Hmm.
Last year, I actually had an opportunity to volunteer because it was the first year for the tournament. So it's a 5-year deal. So we've got 3 more left on this initial contract. But it was really cool being on the other side. On the volunteer side, I kind of got a little bit of an insight to, kind of how tournaments operate a little bit. But from a volunteer standpoint, you don't really see all the details. It looks a lot smoother from the volunteer side. So it's interesting because the tournament's going to happen, regardless. Like, it's coming. So it's one of those things where you do as much as you can, you prepare, you find the right partners. I mean, my role specifically with the LECOM Suncoast Classic is to find, business partnerships, people to attend the event that want to entertain, clients or employees, or they want to play in the pro-am, use that as an opportunity to entertain people, or they just are big golfers and want to be involved that way, and get to play with some, rising stars.
Hmm.
So it was cool to see it from the actual, tournament staff side, because there's a lot of things that kind of go on behind the scenes, that are challenges that we overcome, but you kind of do it on the fly. And thankfully, I'm surrounded by a group that has been in this side of the business for a really long time. So Global Golf Management, the team that I work for there, they've got 30 plus tour events across Korn Ferry, PGA, LPGA. I've done some Olympics work and some different, work with some of the WGC events and stuff like that. So really cool. Actually, before all this COVID-19 hit, I was supposed to go out to the Dell Match Play in Austin. So just to learn a little bit about,
Wow.
yeah, a different tournament. Our group was contracted on the back end to do some of the operations stuff for the tournament, which was cool. So I think one of the big things that I didn't really understand before I got into this whole world is the actual PGA Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour, the LPGA Tours. They run very few tournaments internally. Most of the tournaments out there on the professional tours are contracted with different management groups like Global Golf, to handle
Wow.
different pieces of the tournament on the back end, whether that's the operations from putting up signs to ropes and stakes, around the course, that kind of whole stuff, all that stuff, or like the sales and sponsorship side. So the LECOM tournament that I'm involved with, our group owns everything on the back end of that, from operations all the way through the sales and sponsorships and partnership side of it.
Wow.
So
I
yeah,
didn't know
pretty
that.
cool to kind of see how everything works together, and how we're really intertwined with the tour staff and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
really cool experience for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Can I just add one more thing to what
Yeah,
I forgot to mention this earlier. I'd
yeah,
say one big thing that I've realized over this injury as well is you got to have other hobbies outside of golf. You got to be able to look forward to other things just other than golf. You can't just have your life revolve around just one thing. and that's
Hmm.
possibly why I got injured. I'm not 100% sure, but I've just gotten into cycling, for example, and I've been going out for, really, really long bike rides, and I've been loving it just recently. So
Yeah.
being able to look forward to something else outside of your main focus in golf right now is it's something that has definitely really improved my uh, mental game, believe it or not. But also it helps clear my mind, but it distracts me from something other than golf and not just revolving around golf.
Yeah.
And I think that's, a lot of kids who just start really young, just revolving around one sport, get into trouble where they burn out. I was fortunate enough to play a bunch of sports growing up. I really loved them all, but I didn't ever,
Yeah.
I mean, I eventually found golf, which was, as I got older, my main thing. But
Right.
so being able to look forward to something other than just golf is something that's very important.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too. And I feel like everybody that I've talked to on this show that's been successful, whether it's a coach or a player, I mean, most of the good coaches have played at a pretty high level, but I would say a lot of them are that way. And I mean, you look at some of the guys that are on tour and ladies on tour also. I mean, immediately I kind of think of that group of, Ricky and JT and, Tiger and Brooks and like all those guys that, I mean, you hear Brooks maybe goes a little bit too far in the other direction where he kind of just like seems like he doesn't care at all sometimes. But, there's a lot of guys out there that, like Zach Sucher, for example. Who else am I thinking of that actually I had on the show? Scott Stallings,
Oh yeah, yeah,
PGA player. I mean, he's huge into fitness and CrossFit and like stuff like that. Zach's a big fisherman. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's just, if you do anything, right, and that's the only thing that you're focused on, it's just a natural
yeah.
progression that you're either going to get a little bit tired of it or it just kind of loses its excitement
Yeah,
over
just
time.
consumes
So,
you.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm a huge advocate of multi-sport athletes. I think at some point, it makes a little bit of sense to start focusing on one at some point as you
Yeah,
get a little bit older. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really, really good observation on your point or on your
thank
part
you,
for sure.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, any last things before we sign off?
No, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. I really appreciate you doing this, and
Thank you.
I'll be following along. I wish you the best of luck. I guess graduating over the next week, and then at Northern Colorado. So
Thank you
look
so
forward to
much.
keeping in touch with you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.